Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Come on into the room. So, if you want to learn how to get housing for your nonprofit, because so many of you guys come to me and ask questions about, I want to do a transitional house or I want to do a group home. How do I get into that? How do I do that? I can tell you, I'm not the person, I'm not the expert for that. I can tell you generally, but I would much rather you talk to someone who's done it. And guess what, y'all? I have somebody here today who can talk to you about that and who's actually done it. So her name is Felicia Edelman. I'm going to introduce her just a little bit and just share a little bit about her background before I bring her on. While I'm getting ready for that, y'all know the drill. Please let us know who you are, where you're from. You never know who's watching, you never know who's looking for partners on this live. And these are one of the lives that I actually keep up. So the lives that I do by myself, I take down and I keep for my APP society, but the ones with the guests stay up. So you never know who's reading these comments and scrolling through. So let us know where you're from, what you do for your nonprofit, so people can learn more about you. Hey, y'all. Hey, Lynn. Hey, Abigail, Mika, and Dina. So nice to see y'all. Thank y'all for joining me for a Monday night. All right. So just a little bit about Felicia, and she's going to share way, way more. She's going to give you everything, y'all, but she started a nonprofit called Uncle Dave's Housing. She has a lot of experience in shared housing, group home models, all of the housing models that you want to hear about today, y'all. You're going to hear. She has been doing this since 2010, and she's also a real estate attorney in California. So she has homes and she does her nonprofit in California. But I'm excited because I know that the information she's going to share today can apply across the country, y'all. So thank you for joining. Oh, we got 33 people on the line already. So that tells you, Felicia, they're ready. So let me bring you on. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today, Tiffany. This is exciting. 33 people, that's a lot more than I thought.
37 now, so we're getting up
Wow.
there.
Hi, everybody. I'm Felicia Edelman, and I'm lots of things. But most importantly, I'm married to a man named David, who's also known as Uncle Dave, because that's the nonprofit we founded together that we'll talk about. And I just want to say, I've been following you since 2016. I was going through some of my emails and some of the resources that I needed, and I found an email from Tiffany, boss on a budget 2016, because I use your resources, and it's really good to collaborate and network with people. I always believe, especially when you're trying to make a social impact in your community, whatever you're doing.
Yes.
So I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I went to law school and became a real estate attorney, doing a lot of landlord tenant, a lot of commercial leases, some homeowners association
Mm-hmm.
clients, and that kind of area of law. I had been doing, and to back up a little bit, I had been doing some drugs
Mm-hmm.
during law school to help me study, and I ended up going to a drug treatment center. It's called Beit Teshuva in Los Angeles. It had a Jewish background, spiritual background, with a rabbi running it. And there at drug rehab, there was this man that had been released from prison.
Mm-hmm.
All he had was $200 gate fee money, gate key money they call it,
Mm-hmm.
and nowhere to live because his family had disowned him. And
Mm-hmm.
so finally, a Jewish treatment center said, "Come live with us. You can live with us," even though he wasn't a drug addict per se. And so that's where I met him. I met, his name is David, and he chased me. And he's 20 years older than me, which I love to tell everybody. But I remember on our first date, he told me the story of his life before, and I was like, "Are you serious?" My life was so boring, so plain. I was so afraid to share my little sheltered life with him after what he told me,
Mm-hmm.
that his experiences and what he's done. And I was just good and bad stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, we fell in love. And a couple of years later, I had a client at my law firm that needed help getting tenants to pay rent. However, she was losing the house to foreclosure. And if I did some legal stuff, by the time it came around to the judge ruling she was not going to be the owner of the house. The bank would be the owner.
Mhm.
So it wasn't worth my time. But I said to her, I have somebody who might be able to help you. And I sent Uncle Dave over. He was also working as a counselor, a drug and alcohol counselor at a treatment center here in Los Angeles. And he went over and collected the rents, used the strong man, tough, thing, and got the rents because she was entitled to them. She still owned the house up until she lost it in foreclosure.
Mhm.
David came home to me and said, honey, you know what? We know so many people that need affordable housing, and we can do what this lady's doing. And so we try to buy a house. And I will tell you the hardest part about starting a group home, whether,
Mm.
and I'll get into the different types in a sec, is finding a property. If you
Mhm.
already have a home, you're a step ahead of everybody. Not one step, probably 2 or 3 steps ahead. Because we looked and looked, and we were trying to, like I said, buy the house. But it was in 2008, 2009, right when the real estate.
The housing crash. Yeah. Mhm.
So you had to buy stuff basically at foreclosures to get a good deal. And in California, we do our foreclosures on the court steps. So I sent David down there, and he's
Mhm.
standing around with all these foreclosure sharks that they call them, with stacks of cashier's checks to get to the closest price that is bidded on.
Mhm.
We didn't have the cash. We were going to do a loan. We had down payment, but not a loan. So, anyways, we never were able to buy it. And because I had put what we wanted to do out there and called a lot of people and made a big effort, somebody called us back and said, hey, we have this place. Are you interested? And it was a 4-unit apartment and a single family residence in front of this apartment unit in
Mhm.
the hood, literally the hood. And I didn't know this. It's also known as the second worst zip code next to Skid Row.
Mm. This is in LA.
South Los Angeles, the
Mhm.
hood where all the gangs are, and just poverty is everywhere there. And it's really a tough, tough area. So, least to say, I've seen it all. So, because a lot of people who grew up in that area come and live with us, and we started housing people coming out of the justice system, out of jails
Mhm.
or prisons, out of treatment centers, off the streets. And in time, we also built a lot of partnerships with organizations. But let me get back to Tiffany, I didn't even ask you how long do I get to speak for?
It's okay.
And is there
We're
a
free
question or
flowing.
answer?
We're free flowing, but I also want to make sure if people have questions that they're able, you're able to see some
Should
of the
we do
questions.
Q
So
and A?
no, I just wanted to say something really quick about what you said, Felicia, about how you even heard about the house. Because a lot of people come to me and say, well, how do I get a building or how do I get a van? And a lot of times I'll tell people, you just have to state your intention. You just really have to state what you're trying to do and meet people because it's not just going to come to you if you just are looking on the internet. A lot of times you just have to get out there, join clubs or associations, and people who know you and know what you're trying to do can recommend certain things. So I just wanted to point that out, like just how you heard about that. That's how a lot of this happens, where just natural relationships and people just things come up because of you being in the right place at the right time, but you have to position yourself to receive. So I just wanted to put that
Smart.
out there.
No, thank you. You're so smart on that. You're right on point. That's completely what I believe. I mean, life
Mm-hmm.
is about relationships. And
Mm-hmm.
don't open your mouth. You're not going to get. You have to go in for the ask. You have to tell, like you said, your intention.
Mm-hmm.
And I coach a lot of people on finding a property, and I'll give them who to call, where to go. I'll do a research thing with them online, but yet they don't go.
Mm.
They'll call them maybe, but sometimes you need to go in person. It's that connection that we make that builds the relationship between people. And that's why I believe so much in collaborations and coalitions. And that's how we can have a better society is by working with each other. That's how you can have a better business by asking for help, working with others. It's not
Mm.
about competition, it's about collaboration.
Did y'all hear that? Asking for help, opening your mouths, not being afraid to say what you need instead of feeling like you got it. This is your thing. Sorry, go ahead,
No,
Felicia.
I love what you're doing. I know, no, because I learn from everybody. There's, I try and remain as teachable as possible, and the more I know, I can learn something from everybody. So I love listening to what other people say. So, in general, there are two types. Well, the background of group homes, real quick, came from housing foster children. The
Mm-hmm.
government called the housing for children group homes. I don't really understand or know how it kind of became the shared housing, shared living movement and
Mm-hmm.
why they use the group homes. To me, it's all the same. And if you think about it, when we are born, we live with our family, we share a house with our family. If you go to
Mm-hmm.
college, you share your room with a roommate. When you're married, you share your house or place with your husband. So
Mm-hmm.
we are naturally inclined to do shared housing. It is also, in my belief, as a real estate attorney too, an investor, that shared housing is the future of the real estate market. And if you guys are asking yourself, when should I buy something? Is it a good time to buy? The good time to buy is when you can afford it now. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's, you will always make money with real estate, and that's just the bottom line. If it's a good, if you do your numbers, your research, and make sure it's a good investment.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, can I ask you a quick question about that? Actually, based on what you've learned about acquiring housing and setting all of that up, like what are the biggest lessons that you've learned from doing this for over 20 years?
it's kind of about, we've always leased all our houses because California, as you know, is a really expensive state to live in.
Mm-hmm.
For $1 million, you can get a little two-bedroom condo in a nice city. And also the cost I found out for building a studio for one homeless person is 180,000. And
Mm,
we've learned how to. I'll answer, direct me back to your question. It's like we've learned at Uncle Dave's Housing, which is the nonprofit that David and I co-founded in 2010, how to open a group home within 30 days for around $30,000 it costs to get it ready to be livable and to get all
mhm,
the supplies and everything. And then our houses, we rent duplexes, and they can each duplex can hold up to about 30 people. Is it per duplex? Yeah. So now we have a total of how many duplexes? I think we have 8 duplexes and one old Victorian house. We have over 250 beds. And I also want to share that group homes can be a profitable business. As in February, we are now the owners of one of our properties. We bought a trailer.
wow. So you lease, the way you started out was leasing from someone else and then renting to others to stay there. Is that right?
That is right. And we got
Okay.
hooked up with our first landlord because I had called the hard money lender and he remembered me. And I made
Hmm.
an impression upon him. Just to be honest and to be upfront, I'm in a 12-step program. So was he.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
had that connection. And
Hmm.
that's really what it's about. You want to learn how to connect with people. And I always tell people, go to open houses, talk to the realtors. Yeah, you're not interested in that particular house, but they know about houses that aren't even on the market that could be appropriate for your group home. Talk
Hmm.
to property management companies that deal with a lot of investors who own rental properties.
Hmm.
Because if you own a rental property right now, you rent it out to one family, the whole entire house for, let's say, $2,000. I
Hmm.
can teach you how to convert it to shared housing and where you can get anywhere from at least 4,000 to 6,000 instead of renting out the entire place. You rent out either the rooms or the beds.
Hmm.
And before I get any further, all these types of group homes, shared living, they're all really the same. What it boils down to is there's two types of group homes, the way I see it. There's the licensed ones, where you need a license by the state. It's governed, especially, for example, with children or
Mhm.
with people that are disabled that need a lot of help, health wise.
Mhm.
So those are governed where you have to get a license. And there's requirements, every state is different. Then there's the unlicensed group homes where you don't need a license, such as us. We did sober livings in the beginning. Nowadays, there are places to go and get a sober living certification, but
Mhm.
it's not really the government. At least in California at this point, it's not. Um, so you there's the licensed and the unlicensed. I'm the expert at the unlicensed one. That's where I
Mhm.
fit.
Less work.
Right. And then what it boils down to is who do you want to house? But I will tell you, when you're starting out, you need a good credit score no matter what, because
Mhm.
a landlord's not going to rent to you or lease a property to you unless you have a good credit score. And a lender's not going to loan you money for a mortgage unless you have a good credit score. So you need a good credit score to start. I always recommend going to creditkarma.com
Mhm.
to find out about your credit score and getting help there. And you also need money to start the business. However, if you have a really good credit score like we did, we got business credit cards. And
Mhm.
everything we bought, we put on a business credit card. So you don't need that much money to start off with, but it does cost, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. And there are also funding grants, a lot of things if you're a nonprofit. But I will also tell you guys that we opened our doors January 1st, 2010, and started housing lots of people. We built it up from, I think, about 40, 45 people were able to live at this one property at this time, at
Mhm.
one time. And they were all shared rooms. And the reason we did shared rooms is when we did private rooms, we found that people went a little crazy in their head and started having mental issues,
Mhm.
or we found they would relapse if they had drug issues. There was
Mhm.
no accountability to be in the common areas.
Mm.
So our model is shared rooms. Plus, when you put two beds into a room, you get 1,200 instead of 600 for each room,
Mm.
which, from a business perspective, and another thing too that reminds me, when we started this, and David came to me and said, "We can do this," I had so much fear. I'd always worked for somebody. I'd never been my own boss.
Mm. Mm.
I was really scared. And we had a therapist at the rehab we were at. And I remember my therapist saying, "Why are you doing this? Are you going to fall asleep? Are you going to lay in bed at night worrying about if the beds are full or not?" Because the way I was looking at it, it was more of a real estate investment. David was more of the how can I help people? He's the
Mm.
social impact person, and that's what makes us such good partners. He's the people person, I'm the business person. And I think that's helped in our success because you need to know how to make the partnerships with the organizations, how to connect with people that live at your houses. And then you also need to know your finances and know how to run a house and know how to do all the bills and everything.
Mhm.
That was a big thing. Um, I no longer have that fear. We've marketed well enough where we always have probably a 95% occupancy rate. We out of the 15 addresses, it's 8 locations though. We have
Mhm.
250 beds.
Okay. So I'll stop really quickly just because I see some questions that I want to address if I can, and just make sure we see everybody. Thank y'all for coming in and saying hello. Hey Cheryl. So Kimberly Mack said, well, first of all, she said, will you offer your information at the end, Felicia? So please feel
Of
free
course.
to offer in the chat too if you want to right now to put
Oh,
your
I see. It's private chat though, or do I do?
you see comments.
Oh, I see it. Oh, now I do.
Okay.
Sorry, you guys. I'm a little slow technology. I'm a little bit older than most of you, so
But she put that info there, y'all. And Kimberly said, I thought they stopped group homes. I'll just address that for foster care.
oh no, wait, hold on. I'm not there. This is on.
Or if you private chat me, Felicia, I'll just drop it for you. So you can just private chat me. But Kimberly, so to answer that question, there's no longer an incentive to have group homes for states. So I'm not going to make it complicated. This is only for foster care though. There was a federal law that made states reevaluate whether kids could be in group care, and only certain kind of group homes can exist, meaning they can get federal reimbursement for it. So a state could do it, but the state has to pay for it. The federal government will no longer pay for it. And if the federal government isn't paying for it, then some states won't do it. So it just really it depends on the state's approach to this. But there was a federal law to limit the use of group homes in foster care. So anybody who comes to me and talks about group homes and foster care, I just really advise them to do their research first, understand the county, look at that law so they can make sure that they're not making a bad business decision. So just wanted to answer that one.
Exactly. And a lot of that you're talking about is the licensed group homes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there is lots of types of funding. Oh, so back in 2010, when we took rent money, David took it in his name. We used his social security number. It's a DBA. That's all you had. We filed.
Mm-hmm.
We did not become an entity. And when I say that, we did not become a corporation, S or C Corp. We did not become a nonprofit. We did not become an LLC until 2012, where we filed with the state of California, because first you always have to file with your state for your entity, whatever type of entity you want to be. And so we became a C Corp, which is the regular corporation. And then you have to apply with the federal government to become the nonprofit. And why we applied, I didn't want to pay taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And we also had a social purpose. We were providing affordable housing in Los Angeles, and people needed that. And so when I say that people needed affordable housing, that's another reason. I mean, shared housing is in such demand. People can't afford their own apartments, even. They
Mm-hmm.
can't afford to buy a house. They need to share their houses. Even seniors today want to share their house, they don't want to live by themselves. In Europe, they call it co living.
Mm-hmm.
So far ahead on shared living than we are in America.
Mm-hmm.
That it's just going to keep growing, and the demand, the more we have a lack of affordable housing, the more shared housing will be needed. And
That's
that's
why that's why you think this is the future of real estate because of the cost.
you
I
got.
definitely see that. I see a lot of questions about like, does this apply to me? Does it apply to me? I like how Felicia defined it, like licensed versus unlicensed. So first of all, understand if what you're trying to do needs to be licensed or is regulated by your county or your state. And that goes by every county and state. So you have to do that kind of legwork first. And if it's unlicensed, then that's kind of the lane that Felicia is talking about. And she's talking about in any kind of industry. So someone asks, does this apply to senior housing? Yes. Does this apply to, people for domestic violence? Yes, if it doesn't require a license. So just want to let you guys know if it's transitional housing, and that's kind of what I put on the thumbnail. Yes, it applies to that. It applies to any kind of shared housing that you want to do. These are the lessons that she's sharing today. Okay.
Okay. And now I do see everybody's questions. Heaven Sent Lynn has a question. I do not know what transitional housing is. So, transitional housing means that people are just in transition. And it can mean, and there's also other names for transitional house, like a halfway house. And halfway houses were the terms that the government used when somebody had been in prison for a long time and they got out and they still wanted to have some oversight over this person. So they went to a halfway house. Transitional just means that it's a temporary place to live. However, I will tell you at Uncle Dave's Housing, we've never kicked anybody out, and we do have people that have lived with us for over 10 years because the quality of our housing is so great. And I have to brag about that. Even of the health department of Los Angeles has told us a few times that we are the cleanest, nicest transitional housing that they've ever seen in Los Angeles. So we're proud of that. And halfway house, I'm just boarding house. It's all the same. We had sober livings in Pasadena, and I'm going to share this. We experienced what's called NIMBY, not in my backyard.
Mm,
Uh, you want, before you buy or lease a property, you want to check your local city zoning laws and building codes, because Pasadena, also known as the snobbiest city in America, has
mm-hmm,
a archaic, unconstitutional law in their books that says no more than six people who are not blood related can live together. And
mm,
they came after us. They put 200 misdemeanor charges against me and against David. We fought them, and it went on for about 2 years. And I said to David, I said, also known as Uncle Dave, I call him David, do you want to spend all this time fighting the city and going to federal court and spending all this money on attorney's fees, or should we just move on? We
mm-hmm,
wanted to move on and help people, and that's what we did. And there were other cases going on too, but Pasadena doesn't want sober livings because they think, oh my God, we're going to have drug addicts or alcoholics in our backyard. There are
mm-hmm.
people everybody knows somebody who has an issue with
That's
alcohol
great.
and drugs. So it's just crazy.
Mm-hmm,
And that's why I also say don't go to a homeowners association because they have the ability to say, no, you can't have that type of rental.
mm,
And there are fair housing laws that do protect people, especially on disabilities. And drug and alcohol is a disability too.
mm-hmm.
So, but a lot of people don't know it, and you don't want the fight. And that's really, you don't want to waste your time and energy and money on it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Can I ask you a quick question about what you mentioned? Sorry, about the starting cost. You said it wasn't, it costs money, but it wasn't a lot. So what are some things that people should consider in terms of cost if they want to get their first house?
So if you're going to lease a house, you need a first month's rent and security deposit.
Okay.
And then you're going to have to buy the furniture for the house, the TVs, a house computer, the beds, mattresses,
Okay.
kitchen supplies like that. And it's around, to tell you the truth, for us, it's around 25 to 30,000. I know where to buy everything. That's why you want a coach who's going to save you money,
Mm-hmm.
just telling you how to save your mattresses and how to avoid things like bed bugs. We had a huge homeless people bring in bed bugs, unfortunately, in Los Angeles. We had a
Mm-hmm.
huge problem back in 2013 where we even ended up having to tent the property.
Mm,
We must have spent close to $100,000 just on that one issue. That had I had a coach or a mentor to teach me what to do to avoid it, would have been nice. Would have
mm-hmm.
saved me so
Mm-hmm.
much money. So, and then back to all the different types, transitional living. I just, there's other questions too, right?
Yeah, I can try to film it for you so you don't have to feel like you.
Okay, all right, so I'll let you know. So, but I always tell people or tell my clients, you may want to house veterans or seniors, whoever you want to house. But the truth is, when you open your doors, it's just like when people ask me in law school, what type of law are you going to practice, Felicia?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I was going to practice this type of, social justice, working at legal aid society or whatever. And I would tell them really the truth. The truth is, I was going to practice door law. And door law is whatever walks through that door.
Mm,
Same when you start. You really are going to try not to be too picky. Just fill up the beds, and over time, you'll be able to focus on the population you want to really house,
mm-hmm.
unless you want to go for funding in the beginning, because there are grants, there are government contracts, there is SBA loans, there's private lending, there's a lot of stuff that can help you get the funds for starting. And I've even heard of people who start with nothing. Very rarely, you can go to somebody who owns a property and say, you're renting to this family for 2,000, the example I gave before. let me convert it over to shared housing and I will manage and operate it. Because once you open the house,
Mm-hmm.
depending upon who lives there, for example, in my experience, we were in the hood. 50 men who were either parts of gangs or ex-gang members who may have been sex offenders. We took everybody. We did not discriminate. And I believe that everybody deserves a second chance, just as Uncle Dave had a second chance at coming out of prison. I had a second chance by going to rehab. I didn't want to be stuck on drugs for the rest of my life. So we dealt with a lot of rough people. And I saw stuff. Even in the Pasadena Sober Living, we had somebody OD. I've had a few people OD because since 2010, Uncle Dave and I have housed probably, no, not probably. I know it's over 30,000 people.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a lot.
And like I said, I came in with a real estate investment, but when I think about it, when I go to sleep tonight, because of us, because of what we started together, 250 people have a nice place to live to call home. And we encourage community family living environment in our homes.
I
And
love it.
and each of our homes has a house manager who started out as a guest, and then we asked them if they wanted to help out and get free rent and a few other benefits and be our eyes and ears for the house. Because if you're not
Okay.
going to be there every day, you need someone eyes and ears. If you're going to be an active, hands-on group homeowner, because there is the passive group homeowner
Mm-hmm.
where you could rent to people who are professionals working and aren't going to have the reentry needs that most people have. They'll just have the financial need or the want to live with somebody because it's
Mm-hmm.
a natural desire. So there is a way to do it passively. The way we do it, there's no way. But what I, who knew I was going to ever say this? But I am proud to tell all of you guys that every single one of our house managers has been to prison or jail, which makes a huge difference with forming partnerships that are looking for housing with their clients, especially if you're housing people in the justice system. Because
Mm.
when somebody comes out of jail or prison, somebody's been in prison for 28 years, the first person that they're going to talk to at their new home has been in prison.
Mm.
It's an automatic connection,
Trust.
relationship.
Yeah.
That's kind of the theme here is relationships, building relationships. And it just really helps. And it also helps in applying for grants if you're a nonprofit and even for profits applying for grants. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's important too.
So there are a couple questions that I want to get to. One from Georgia, but just to follow up on that question about making partnerships with organizations, it was so important. You're going to hear Felicia say that over and over again. Do you have any tips and pointers about making partnerships, especially with community organizations? Because I get that question a lot too. Like, well, how do I do this?
Well,
And I kind of know where you're going to go with this, but I'll give you the floor.
oh, where am I going to go? Tell me. I want to know. I'd love your input too. So the
I'll,
first
I'll,
thing you'll tell me after I
mhm.
share, okay, that's fair, Tiffany. The first thing I'm going to tell you is I do have the Ultimate Marketing Guide, which is my work and research of 15 years
Mhm.
listed. It's on my website. It's for sale. It's cheap. It's like $200, but it will save you the hours and hours of figuring out where to go or how to talk to people and different ideas because I didn't know at first. When we started in 2010, we took in whoever came. We advertised online. Craigslist would be a big one. Facebook Marketplace is another big one.
Mhm.
And then there's must be 100 different places to advertise. And I always tell people if you want to know what websites to advertise on, pretend you are the one looking for transitional sober living housing and
Mhm.
do a search and see what comes up. And
Mhm.
that's probably your best bet to go with those websites or
Mhm.
those platforms to advertise. As for organizations, oh, that's a whole nother world.
That's a whole nother live, right?
Yes, and that's why I have my marketing guide too. So I used to sit in my office, I remember, and whenever I had a minute, I would call organizations and find out who the housing caseworker is, try and get an appointment with them to go and
Mhm.
see them personally. I couldn't, I worked at the law firm still, but I sent Uncle Dave to go down and meet with them in person. And what's really important too as part of marketing is you better have a website to refer people to go and look to see what you're offering. Have a business card. You can have a brochure or pamphlet. But I think next to a website, the most important marketing item is a flyer. And I have free samples of that too on my site. So, and it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. I used to do it in Word, black and white, and send them out
Mhm.
with those and print them on colored paper. So I would call them up. We'd meet with the housing. He would meet the housing caseworkers, but you had to keep in touch with them. On the holidays, for example, we would give them presents, cookies, or whatever for their office, buy them donuts. You go into their office with a box of
Mhm.
donuts and say, "Good morning, everybody. I got donuts for you. Here's Uncle Dave's housing." You can get them, get little imprinted stuff with your. We did. What did we do? We did magnets, I think, or
Mhm.
keychains. But somehow we just kept pushing the name Uncle Dave's Housing, and it's a
Mhm.
catchy name. And that matters too. A lot of people just boss on a budget. That's a cute name. People are going to remember that name.
Mhm.
But originally, I wanted to name it David Mark, his middle name, David Mark LLC or whatever. Who would ever remember that? I mean, Uncle Dave's is so much cuter, and then all the guys get to call me Auntie Felicia.
Mhm.
So, okay. And I wanted another thing about the amount of money you can make and stuff. David told me in 2010, I'm going to work and build this organization up, build what we have so that you don't have to work at the law firm that has the golden handcuffs on you. They paid me well, but I hated it. And
Mhm.
who likes to work for somebody else working long hours? Nobody does because now I get to do my own hours. 2013, 3 years later, I gave my notice. See ya.
Mm. So it is possible using
Hmm.
this model as a way to earn income to be able to
Oh,
the work
yes.
that you want to do. And this is a good point for people who are trying to figure out like how to scale and grow bigger. If you're only depending on grants, which you're beholden to their timelines, their requirements, things like that. When you earn income and you have the right marketing strategy to make sure people are renting, then you have the freedom and you have the unrestricted money to make good decisions and hire. So you always want to think about ways you can stay sustainable. And this is a great way to be sustainable. But like Felicia said, run the numbers, do the math to make sure you're making the right investment before you go deep in. And so I'm realizing, y'all, that this is going to have to be like a part two or maybe part three and four.
My pleasure. Whatever you guys, I like to help people. That's my passion.
So
So
I have to jump off at 45, 15 minutes before the hour. But look at me sounding like I'm on radio. But I do want to address a couple of questions if you don't mind, Felicia.
that's
Um,
what I'm here for.
so Georgia said, I have an LLC and I have good credit. I don't have a lot of money. Any place to go to have someone donate some property. Also, if I bought property, how do I hold title?
Okay, so there's a lot of ways that if you bought property, how do you hold title? I, I'm going to tell you in general, you're going to have to think about liability. I have to be careful. I can't give legal advice as a
Mhm.
lawyer. Think about liability, which means you better go get some CGL, which is a commercial general liability insurance policy. You want to be insured. I will tell you right now, I hold property, the duplex, I'm sorry, the triplex we just bought. It's in my name, and I did a lease with Uncle Dave's Housing. However, I'm going to put it over to, I know this is going to be confusing,
Mhm.
into an LLC to protect myself. I'm just telling you my personal story because that's all I can really tell.
Right.
And once it's in the LLC, I'm going to put the LLC into a revocable trust. And that's because the trust will be able to have the beneficiary of the nonprofit, Uncle Dave's Housing.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. So it's on 78th Street. It was a 78th Street LLC. I'm in the process of, I have the LLC now. Now I need to do the revocable trust and put the 78th Street trust into the property, which is basically putting the property in, and then making the beneficiary Uncle Dave's Housing instead of just having a lease so that the nonprofit owns it. And you have to be careful because I, the lender doesn't want to put a corporation on the mortgage. They want to put an individual. So I had to go on.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to open myself up to liability to my other properties that I own. So that's why I want to get my name off. So good credit, you don't have a lot of money. Place to go. Someone to donate some property. Start by leasing. Um, you should be able to at least afford, raise some money on for a first month's rent and security deposit. And
Mm-hmm.
you want to get at least, I would say, a 5 bedroom house because the more people you can put in, the more money you can make. It's a numbers game. You might want to try the SBA. There are government grants out there. They're competitive. There are government contracts out there. Go to your county, go to your city,
Mm-hmm.
and see what's there. As a coach, I do the research with my clients, and we look at it, and and I basically narrow it down to focus. Don't waste your time on this grant. Go to this grant. I'm not a grant writer whatsoever. And you can get creative. You can go to hard money lender,
Mm-hmm.
which means when I say that they'll lend you the money with your good credit, but you're going to pay a little bit higher interest rate. Such
Mm-hmm.
as, like today, if you get a mortgage for your house, it's your primary residence, it's going to be around 7%. Hard money lender is going to be about 8.5 to 10%. Or do what we did. You can take cash out on your credit cards. That's 0% interest, sometimes for up to 18 months, 12 months to 18 months. And just make sure you pay it back on time before you have to pay the interest. It didn't cost me anything to borrow the money.
Mm-hmm. So thank you for saying that, Felicia, and for being so specific about the different ways to do that. That's really, really helpful. And I would just say for y'all, a lot of the questions that you may be asking are very specific to your financial situation, to your state, to your county. You should always consult a real estate professional and a lawyer and your accountant, because just because she does it one way doesn't mean you need to do it that way. She did it because of what her interests are and how her setup is. So I just would advise that you not just, I'm gonna do it just like that, but consult a professional so they can kind of assess your situation and advise you. And always be mindful, y'all. I'm always gonna say this, even though I'm not a lawyer. Conflict of interest. Make sure you're not, hemming yourself up by making certain decisions that look off. But a lawyer can help you navigate that. You know what I mean? So just make sure you are not skirting that, like just saying, oh, I don't have enough money, so I can't afford a lawyer. When you're making decisions like this, you should, especially when it comes to ownership and property. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for all the disclaimers. And those disclaimers are so valid. And that's like the best advice. Invest in yourself and pay a lawyer or pay a coach or pay a mentor. It's an investment in yourself and
that's
save
right.
yourself a ton of money, ton of headaches, and a lot of time.
That's right. So I'm sorry, y'all, that we have to end now. Felicia, I promise that I will bring you back. And next time I'll try to gather questions so we can ask those questions and maybe use that as the guide, as a
I do
Q&A.
it. Yeah, I'd love
Yeah.
to.
But y'all, please go to SOS. So www.soshousing.org. That is Felicia's website. Go ahead and check her out. She's very helpful. And I think Mika on here said that she saw you in Group Home Riches. Like she knows
Yeah,
you from it. Okay.
I
So
bought their gold course, so I was in their Facebook group that's now on school. I'm there. I help people out there a little bit, so I give advice in that platform.
awesome. So y'all, can we just give it up for Felicia? I don't have my iPad because I'm traveling today, but yes, let's give it up for Felicia. Thank you so much for all of your insight. We had just scratched the surface. So we're going to come back and answer the questions and do a Q&A probably in next month, if that's okay, Felicia. Does that sound good?
Sounds like fun. I like doing this. So yeah, let's go have some fun. I'm all
All
about
right. All right. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Uncle Dave in the back.
fun.
You know,
All
I
right.
see your
Thank
hand
you so
here
much.
and
Bye.
there. But have a good night, everyone. We'll see you next time.
All right. Bye.
Bye.